And at some point, yes, I mean, everybody does grow and get big, but do they get big enough to say, now I want 70% and not 35? So that's a challenge, a bridge you have to cross when you get there.
No, that's a very clear answer. Thank you for that, Todd.
Sure.
So again, sort of conceptualize or trying to understand, how many of these ISP relationships that the big guys like a WorldPay or a Global Payments or something, how many of those guys might have? How many of these sort of little niche software packages, do you think a big player like that would actually distribute through?
Oh man, that's a tough question to answer because, and I guess you mean how many of those relationships does a WorldPay have that is their own? And it's not something, because, when you have processors, there are many different kinds of acquirers, right? Sage, we'll speak, with them. Sage does processing with TSYS and First Data and WorldPay, right? So they send acquisition business to all of those different channels. Now, would you consider WorldPay having access to that integration if it comes through Sage? Or were you more wondering how many WorldPays have bypassed the Sages of the world and gone directly to these niche softwares and said, hey, why don't you code directly to us? Because that's a little bit more challenging because now I will say this, more of the large organizations are trying to do this, right? They are, and they're doing it by acquisition. They are going out and they are buying things like Sage. They are buying things like Century Business, where it gives them direct access through a smaller channel that's acquired these relationships to now own them and cut out what they were paying out to the Century Business, what they were paying out to Sage, right? So that's really the way that a lot of them have been doing this lately. And one good example is TSYS' acquisition of ProPay, where TSYS went out and basically just bought an entire aggregate, model with mobile payments that was pretty specific to the small and medium-sized high-risk business. And so they basically bought a channel of business and don't have to pay, residual on it anymore. Now it's direct. Would they be interested in going and building that relationship from scratch? It's hard to say. I've never had any exposure to that.
Right, understood. No, that's clear. So, but I mean, presumably the answer then is quite a lot. If previously they used to try and do it via one of the big accounting packages or something like that, and now they're suddenly directly integrating with small software providers because it's easier. Out of interest, how sticky? What's the sort of churn rate on these? I guess first of all, on between the merchant acquirers and the ISVs, do you have like fixed term agreements that come up once every 5 years or something like that?
The standard. Yep. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, second.
Oh, no, and then with the underlying. I guess this is a tougher question to generalize about because you've got some very specific verticals, and I don't know, churn for dental surgery might be incredibly low because there's really just no point if we've got a package that works. But how frequently do these underlying merchants switch their kind of integrated offerings to look for sort of a cheaper or better provider?
Well, it's another time I get to use that fantastic word. It does depend. If they are a, like you said, if they're a niche market like a doctor's office, like a school, some type of a government entity, a nonprofit, their technology buying opportunities are very few and far between. So as a result, they could be in an ISO ISV relationship for 3, 5, 7 years before anything would ever come up, right? And that really that's really driven by what is the market showing. Another example I have is restaurant supply, right? If a restaurant supply has been doing things a certain way for a long time, and they've seen now a new type of software that gives you the ability to send a text to a buyer that says, hey, you owe $1,200, and the guy can respond back and say, go ahead and pay. Well, now they're seeing an increase, and that's a value add that they're interested in. That's a buying opportunity. So usually the merchant agreement at a minimum, it has been a 3-year contract with a yearly auto renew. That's what I've experienced, throughout my career with most ISO relationships. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't cancel after 6 months. I mean, there's early termination fees on every kind of contract imaginable. But usually, as a standard, it's been a 3-year, a 3-year contract.